Thank you so much for having me here again. And again, quick apology in case we hear any drilling, but I've tried to let everyone be aware. Thank you very much for having me here today. I'll just move this on. Communicating sustainability as a small practice. So we're Gbolade Design Studio, and we're a practice, small practice based in London. We specialize in residential and community developments for both public and private sector clients. This just shows a range of the types of projects we do when we work with public sector clients. Is very much looking at local authorities as well as housing associations, and private sector clients look at SME developers or slightly larger developers, and some homeowners as well, as long as sustainability is the output, depending on what brand, if you like, of sustainability. As a practice, we've definitely built upon our experience and our expertise. I myself, I'm a passive house designer, and we have an overall value and ethos of making everyday places for people extraordinary. We believe strongly that to do this, sustainability has to be embedded in the way we address any new schemes, or indeed redevelopment of existing schemes as well. So our practice ethos, our practice values, and the project that eventually we work on is really based around these theories. Now, the presentation is going to be in a straight line, but this is very much not a straight line affair. In terms of our ethos has definitely been an iterative one, which has come from the research we've done, as well as the projects and the practice that we've implemented as we've gone along. We're very aware of the main drivers for change that we have, but significantly for us as a practice, and why specifically in this year we decided to really just go all out for sustainability, was recognizing that we are at the beginning of a decade of action. Many local authorities have declared, 70% I believe, have declared a climate emergency. We know that that we're looking towards a green recovery now, as well as the sustainable development goals, very well embedded now in who we are and what we do as society. We believe as architects it's important that the work we do, the projects we do, and the clients that we work with understand how we as a practice work and what we value. And therefore it's an aligning, hopefully, of those values that allow us to work together. So as a practice, we developed our Clare ethos. We have 4 Clare ethoses, which look at, or Clare items, which look at being design-led, of course, commercially astute for our clients as well as ourselves, innovative in the products and process that we undertake, and finally, sustainable. For us, sustainability really looks at adopting a holistic approach. So not just environmental sustainability, of which we're very used to now, but socioeconomic sustainability as well. This allowed us to expand or really drill down into what we meant by that, understanding certainly within the environmental, looking at energy efficiency and carbon reduction, renewable energy, green infrastructure, but also critically on the socioeconomic part, looking at health and well-being, what that means for places, really trying to understand and look outside the red line boundary really, and looking at places as a whole, understanding what it means to have voice and influence in a community, for people to feel like their voice is being heard and designs and developments are being adapted according to what they have said. I'll expand on these themes in a moment. Our approach, and therefore communicating this approach, is very much developed on a lot of what we believe we want to create. We want to create compact neighborhoods, complete neighborhoods, which look really at people, place, and planet, and understanding the 15-minute city ambitions, which is really about being able to walk and cycle to local amenities and social infrastructure within a local economy, within a local space, but also very much a lot of the research and understanding we have from a lot of cultures in West Africa really look at placemaking in terms of what the home is, and the home and the dwelling, looking at not just about the 4 walls that we're used to, but a series of individual dwellings, usually surrounding a compound, which incorporates working space as well, and play space. So really redefining what home it means. All of these ideas, research, opportunities in terms of projects came together to allow us to develop what we believe are strong sustainability ambitions for each project we adopt. And we make that very clear to our clients from the beginning. And so the types of clients who approach us actually have that in mind when they come to us. In terms of structure of how we communicate this, we very much try to identify what our overall goals or ambitions are for each project to our clients. So whether that be net zero carbon by 2030, and breaking that down into the individual goals, which I'll come to expand on in a minute. But then we also look very much at the gaps between local policy and our ambitions. So a lot of local policy, as we know, will very much look at pretty much the lowest common denominator, to be honest, particularly if they've recently been adopted and prior to declaring a climate emergency, or where they've really pushed it, it's a maximum of 19% improvement on Part L in terms of building regulations. So really trying to assess these gaps from the beginning and identifying that with our clients. What we ended up doing, again, none of this is in a straight line, but presentation-wise, it has to be. But what we ended up doing was creating our client's guide to sustainable development. This was really important for us. We did it for three main reasons. One, to share knowledge, of course, to share our own knowledge and our own expertise, our own interest in sustainable development and sustainable design. The second was to demonstrate our expertise. And the third was to create collaborative opportunities, not just project work, not just project-wise with clients, but also with other practices and different types of practices as well. Within the sustainability development guidance, what we focused on initially was highlighting the business case for sustainable development, recognizing that a few of our clients, or a lot of our clients, might be long-term asset holders, such as housing associations. So we certainly started with understanding what the opportunities are for overall or long-term cost reduction, identifying capital expenditure costs. And on that note, the UK GBC have recently released a report highlighting a 3.5 to 5% capex increase on capital costs for residential developments, but also looking at operational costs as well, or long-term maintenance costs, understanding the changing legislation and the environment in which we currently are. We try to communicate this to our clients so they are very well aware of the benefits for them in adopting a holistic and sustainable approach from the beginning. Within each of the categories that I highlighted earlier, we try to be quite clear on the design approach that we're taking, the basics that shockingly don't always get done. So in terms of orientation or fabric first approach, we make that very clear, but then clear targets within these categories. So energy efficiency, looking at net zero carbon, so embodied and operational energy, renewable energy, looking at fossil fuel free technology such as electric heat pumps, green infrastructure, where we're looking at embedding and incorporating green infrastructure for carbon sequestration or biodiversity net gain, depending on the site, sustainable movement, and ensuring and seeing, depending on the scale of the site, whether we can incorporate and adopt a percentage modal shift from vehicular use to walking, cycling, and shared transport. Of course, that includes the circular economy, water efficiency, etc. But critically, we also incorporate a socioeconomic section, sustainability section as well. This really comes to understanding the local requirements. The images on the left really show the project I'm currently working on, which is the Harlow and Gilson Garden Town, where I am preparing the sustainability guidance and checklist. This looks at being currently preparing guidance, which will be adopted to gain material planning way towards the end of the year, beginning of next year. And it really looks at assessing all incoming developments and incoming schemes to the garden town. One of the critical parts of this this piece of work is that it's important to understand what the local requirements are. In some places, they could look at social equity, particularly for the Harlow and Gilson Garden Town. It looks at integrating with existing communities. The reason for that is that Harlow, if you like, is in the middle, and we have these strategic sites around Harlow, which are about 23,000 new homes coming in over the next 20 plus years. We want to really identify how the existing community in and around Harlow are able to benefit from these new developments coming through. Also, we've identified that a significant percentage of the population are not physically active, and so therefore leading to challenges with being overweight. Additionally, there is a growing and aging population, leading to more people living daily with dementia, and child poverty is a challenge, which leads, of course, to poor outcomes for young people. So within this guidance, within this development that we're looking at, it's looking looking at incorporating or preparing guidance to ensure that development incorporates opportunities for daily activities. So whether that looks like gyms in parks or opportunities for really strong walking and cycling infrastructure embedded as part of developments, opportunities for allotments for food growing locally, so people have easy access to daily fresh food. It's really important to understand the local community so we're able to respond directly to their needs. What that's meant for us in terms of work and the sectors we work in, as I highlighted at the beginning, we work public and private sector. This has allowed us, of course, working with the Harlow and Gilson Garden Town, which came originally through public practice. Beyond that year, I stayed on at the Harlow and Gilson Garden Town, and Epping Forest has asked to do, in effect, the same thing, the same type of guidance that would work for the larger Epping Forest District Council. We're also working with another practice, Urban Symbiotics, on regeneration in Croydon, and specifically looking at the Purley area and regeneration there, really looking at how we can create and embed sustainable development. Within private sector, it means we've, the clients who come to us very much have a focus on sustainability because that is what we've put out. So the SME developers and homeowners that do come to us really want either passive house or net zero carbon targets or outcomes, or at the very, very least, a strong fabric first approach. This has allowed us also to work collaboratively with larger practices where we can offer our services as sustainability experts. And certainly an unexpected service, the text has run off the page there, an unexpected service is that we've started to do far more community engagement just because of the experience we've had. We feel like it's critical to ensure that sustainability requires everybody to be involved in the process. So stakeholder engagement is a critical part of that process, because there's no point having a development and expecting people to use it in a certain way. If we want people to walk and cycle, then they need to be part of the process, part of the design, through to the development, and eventually be able to adopt the lifestyles that we know will assist with meeting our ultimate goals. These just highlight some images of the types of work that we get the opportunity to do now. So policy writing, guidance writing, design guides, traditional architecture projects, whether they be passive house. That's a scheme we're doing in Kent, which is a passive house scheme. That's another for Brighton and Hove County Council. That's Purley, and that's Epping Forest, and that's the Garden Town, of course, but also engagements, as we've highlighted. This as part of our joining the Architects Declare and our part for King Country, if you like, in terms of sustainability and sharing knowledge, which we're really passionate about. We created the Architects app, within which has a specific section on sustainability. Here has access to great case studies, videos and webinars, podcasts, as well as just really great reports on energy efficiency, transport, and financing sustainability, which is often left out of these discussions. In conclusion, we definitely communicate our sustainability credentials and expertise and experience and passion through what we already have as expertise and our interests. We are very committed to knowledge sharing, knowledge gaining as much as giving. And this has allowed us to look at our client base and ensure that the types of clients we work with are aligned with our values. This has also allowed us to work on incredibly exciting projects. And we believe that all of this allows us to reach our ultimate goal, which is just about making everyday places for people extraordinary. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tara. I think we're handing straight over to Claire. Thank you. Yes, your expertise and interest and passion is beyond question. Thank you very much. Hopefully we'll have time for questions. Claire, over to you now.
Great. Yeah, so this is us. We're a small team. We've been working remotely for the past 6 years, which pre-COVID was, everybody thought we were bonkers, but now everybody kind of gets it. Basically, because we are mainly aiming at homeowners, but also some small developers, we, in all of our marketing messaging, we're trying to debunk what eco is. So some people think it's really techie, some people think it's for hippies, some people think it's too clever for them, or just not for them for various other reasons. So yeah, one of the things I was going to say is that it's potentially, I mean, I was initially quite nervous about talking too much about eco stuff. I've always been really passionate about it, but I was wary of putting off clients and not being able to get my business going, basically. So I started off specialising in barn conversions, which has led to other rural projects. So we developed a kind of niche in barns, rural kind of planning policy stuff, which is totally different to working in urban areas. And then I've always been talking about eco stuff, so I go to conferences every year and I write about them, and I write about things that interest me, like how to build using hemp and so on. But I've kind of done that in the background. It's never been the full-on main thing on my website. And then since Greta Thunberg started talking about it, I thought, oh, finally, it's cool to be eco. So I'm going to really seriously push this now. And so it's become more front on our website, which is helpful because we've got this background of case studies where we've been doing it as kind of eco by default. So we're not forcing clients into it. I mean, we get some that come to us saying, you know, we're not that eco, but we're interested in it, but we're a bit afraid. Can you help us? And I'm really happy to work with people like that, because if we're preaching to the converted, we're not converting more people. So yeah, these are some of the kind of projects we've worked on, and some of these little blogs we've done are just quite friendly things. So we're not saying you have to do a building project to make home improvements. There are other things you can do, things like this, for example, and then you can go further if you are doing building work. And then we go into techie stuff too, because some people really want that and are really interested in it. We have quite a lot of really intelligent clients who, if you explain it in ordinary language that isn't full of archy speak, then they will get it. And but also you have to kind of think about what are they gaining from that. Yeah, so this is, you know, extra nerdy stuff that we do sometimes for fun. And so basically we try and aim at, so clients' fears are mainly, especially if they're building a forever home or they're updating their home to be a forever home, they don't want to be a mug in 10 years' time when the technology's moved on and they've chosen the wrong thing. They're worried about negative associations with being eco, like I already explained. They want to be comfortable, so that's a big gain for them, and they are prepared to pay a bit more for that. Same with well-being. Especially if they've got allergies or asthma, that, you know, things like MBHR are fantastic for that. They want to mentally feel good about doing the right thing, but they have to weigh it up with costs and benefits, especially like if you're only staying in your home for 5 years, it's hard to get your money back on that. But if you're raising value at the same time, you can kind of make a compromise there. Reducing energy bills, you know, the problem with how houses are valued in this country, unlike on the continent, is that you don't get a increase in value with a, you know, lower maintenance bills house, unfortunately. So we're always quite wary of that. You know, we know that clients have a ceiling on their budget. You know, when you go to a mortgage company, they're going to restrict how much you can spend on your home based on the value of it. So we have to work within that and be quite clever about what we're spending our money on. Yeah, and this is just to end really, another debunking thing, because some people think that character homes, or they get confused with passive house and an eco home, and they think passive house has to be, you know, totally square box and highly technical and a bit like living in a spaceship, which isn't true anyway. But also being an eco home can just be a retrofit, a nice, kind, respectful retrofit to a historic home. It's never going to get to passive house standards unless you do some serious deep retrofit, but it's a really, you know, you're still going to make enormous improvements and still retain the character of your home. So we try and show that that it can be for everybody. So, you know, eco is for all. So that's it. It was quite a short presentation actually. I sped through that faster than I thought I was going to.
Thanks, Claire. Actually, because you got through your presentation so quickly, we probably have got time for a couple of quick questions, which is great. So Tara, would you mind joining Claire and I? And in particular, I think a few people were having a few difficulties hearing what Claire was saying, so maybe we can draw a few more things out in questioning. Maybe I could kick off with the first question of my own. I mean, you both talked a lot about really understanding client drivers and really tailoring your message and your offer to clients. And I think I like your point about preaching to the converted, Claire. But have you ever encountered any kind of real resistance to adopting the sort of sustainable approach that you follow? And in those instances, what's your way in as an architect? Is it the business case? Is it the moral case? Maybe, Claire, you could answer that first.
Yeah, I think it's, if you have clients with a long-term mindset, and we're more and more trying to attract those ones, whereas people who just want an extension are not necessarily going to be wanting to add these extra eco benefits. So although I'm preaching to the converted, I'm not trying to just preach to the converted. I am also minded that who is actually going to spend on this? I've been through the same issues myself with my own house. Like, I know I only want to stay here 5 years, so how much do I put in for the next person to take on further? So I've kind of considered that, because I have limited funds too. So it's important to really understand where they're coming from and not kind of make them feel guilty, because it's not their fault. It's our culture, the way houses are valued. There's all kinds of other things that aren't anybody's fault. It's just how it is. So how do we make it easier for people? But I think people, it's where your priorities are as well. So like, I have a really old car, but I spend money on insulating my house. So and I've had clients who live in caravans but are spending money on really lovely barn conversions. So this is, so I think it's attracting those people to come in, and then you can work with them, and then I don't have the answers for how we're going to solve it for everybody, because not everybody's into it, but at least we can do a few more in this way.
It's a good question, actually, Claire, following on from you were talking about prioritisation, which I think is actually key. And someone's asked, what would you suggest the first priority would be if you're only staying in a house for 5 years? What would be the one thing you do to make your home more sustainable?
It's really bespoke. That's the problem, because we work with services engineers now who are really eco-minded, and we do a thermal model with them on nearly all of our projects now, because it's not just about the individual project, but it's also about the data that we get from that, which we're putting into a big research project to hope that what we learn from that can be more roll-outable. But so what we've discovered is that you need to be really holistic, and there's a kind of sliding scale. So this is what you could do first, like what happens when you change your windows, what happens when you add insulation, what happens if you just airtight your floor because you've got a leaky cellar. And then you can see over time what's the first thing you could do, what's the second, and what are the benefits, and also where the big jumps are compared to the smaller.
The evidence-based approach. And Tara, we've only got time for a very quick answer from you. I guess, although it might seem like a world apart, the conversations you're having with local authority clients around prioritisation are probably not that far apart. How do you engage local authority clients in coming on the journey with you?
I think the great thing at the moment is that because the majority of local authorities have already declared a climate emergency, I must admit it's a slightly easier win, because they know they have to do something. So it really, the conversation is not really about convincing them to do something. It's about what they're going to do. And for local authorities, that tends to start with policy, or at least where they've already adopted a policy, really looking at a robust action plan or guidance and checklist, for example. I'm really trying to advise on what needs to be incorporated in there, and really looking at the categories which I highlighted within my presentation. So we try to definitely encourage them to go through a holistic approach rather than just looking quite narrowly about on carbon reduction, for example, or energy efficiency. And that's our approach when speaking to local authorities.
Thank you both so much. I'm afraid we've run out of time, but I think there are a few other questions coming through on the chat. So if you don't mind hanging around maybe and looking at, see if you can respond to any of those. But thank you for sharing your approaches to advocacy and sharing knowledge.